I'd seen a lot in 2 decades as a nurse: pain, births, goodbyes, devastating diagnoses, but nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for that day. My name is Deborah. I'm 56 years old, mother of 2 grown daughters, and I've spent my entire career as a neonatal nurse. I thought I had seen it all. It was January 2019. Cold outside, and inside, the halls were only warmed by the hum of machines and the hurried rhythm of our footsteps. I was on shift at Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta. Everything felt normal, or at least the kind of normal you learn to live with in a public hospital. Then one of the doctors called me over. "Deborah, we need to bring a baby up from pediatrics. They're going to try placing a shunt. Can you prep the room?" I nodded like I always did, grabbed the paperwork, and started up the stairs. Just another task, another fragile baby, another case, or so I thought. As I climbed, I skimmed the chart. No mother listed, no emergency contact, incomplete file. When I got there, I glanced around and asked, almost out of habit, "Where's his mom?" The nurse didn't hesitate. "He's a ward of the state." Ward of the state. That phrase stopped me cold. Maybe it was the sound of it. Or what it meant. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "His parents abandoned him. He's in state custody. He doesn't have anyone." Something cracked in me right then. Or maybe something opened. A window, a wound, a door perhaps. I walked over to the crib, and there he was, tiny, his head too big for his body, wrapped in a clean but thin blanket, breathing slowly, eyes half open, alone, completely and utterly alone in the world, and yet there was something about him, something I can't explain. When I looked at that baby, I didn't just see a newborn with a complex medical condition. I saw a story, a life no one wanted. A little boy rejected before he ever had a chance to know what love was. It hit me like a jolt, a déjà vu of something I'd never actually lived. And suddenly I was crying. Not out of sadness exactly, but like I had just found something I didn't know I'd lost. This wasn't charity. It wasn't pity. It was connection. I knew I wasn't supposed to, but I picked him up anyway, held him close to my chest, and in that stranger's embrace, something happened that no words can explain. It was instant, deep, like 2 souls recognizing each other. I whispered in his ear, "You're not alone anymore. I'm here now. I promise I'm not going anywhere." When I laid him on the stretcher, he gripped my shirt with his tiny, weak hand. It felt like an answer, a silent agreement. He was telling me, "I'm yours. You found me." His chart had another name, but in my heart, he was already Eli Emmanuel. Emmanuel, because God was right there in that room, in that impossible connection between a middle-aged woman who thought her family was complete and a baby no one wanted who was just trying to survive. They took Eli to surgery. He was barely a month old. The outlook was grim. I couldn't bear to watch. I stood outside the OR sobbing, harder than I had in years, and I made a promise. If he makes it through this, he's mine, and he will be the most loved baby this world has ever seen. When the surgery ended, the doctor came out with slumped shoulders. They couldn't proceed. His brain didn't have enough space for the shunt. He was transferred to the ICU, intubated, incredibly fragile. "Where's his guardian?" someone asked. I took a deep breath and said, "He doesn't have one. But starting today, that's me." The doctor looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Deborah, do you realize what you're saying? He may not live much longer." And with my heart in my throat, I replied, "Maybe not. But if he lives even one day, it's going to be the most loved day of his life." At the time, I already had 2 daughters, Kayla and Kira, both grown and still living at home with me and my husband, Samuel. Our family felt complete. I never planned on having more children. I thought I had given all I had to give. But that day, I realized I hadn't. As soon as I left the hospital with Eli on my mind, I called my husband. I had to tell him. "Samuel, I just met the love of my life," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. He paused. "Are you serious?" he asked, a little unsure. I knew it sounded crazy. "How do you explain to your husband that you suddenly had a son?" I sent him a photo of Eli, and he asked who the baby was. "He was abandoned," I replied. "He has no one, and somehow, I'm the only mother he's ever known." It took Samuel a while to respond, but deep down, I felt he understood. I told him I wanted to bring Eli home, make him part of our family. To my surprise, he loved the idea, said we'd finally have a little football player in the family. The fact that Eli had special needs didn't change a thing for him. Kira, our youngest, had a harder time adjusting. She didn't get how we could adopt a baby at this stage of life. But when Eli finally came home months later, she never let go of him. The rest of the family? That was a different story. As the news spread to our relatives, siblings, cousins, even a few aunts and uncles, the comments rolled in, whispers behind hugs, texts filled with concern, innocent-sounding questions with sharp edges. "Doesn't he have any blood relatives who can take him? Are you sure, Deborah? You've already raised your kids. Why get involved in something like this? What if he never talks, never walks? Are you really ready to carry that for the rest of your life?" And then the one that always cut the deepest. "Isn't this all a bit much? Are you just lonely?" Some didn't even try to hide their discomfort. "What if he has something contagious? Do you even know where he came from?" I knew. He came from a place no one wanted to look, from the shadows of abandonment most people choose to ignore. And no, he wasn't carrying any disease, just the weight of not being loved. A cousin once said it was just a phase, and that if I got tired, the state would step in. As if love could be returned like a rental. As if anyone could look into Eli's eyes and pretend he didn't matter. I still remember a family lunch after Eli came home. An aunt glanced at him, curled up in his adaptive stroller and muttered, "Poor thing, but don't you think this is some kind of punishment?" I took a deep breath, swallowed the hurt, and replied as calmly as I could, "No, Auntie, this is a miracle, and no miracle ever comes easy." Those words, those reactions, they hurt, but they also made me more certain than ever. Eli didn't need the world to accept him. He just needed one safe place, and that place was going to be our home. That Friday at the hospital, I said goodbye to him with a heavy heart. When I returned to work on Monday, he was gone. I feared the worst. They explained he'd been transferred to another hospital in a neighboring city, one better equipped to care for him. That's when I started the process to fight for his custody. I spoke with social workers, learned systems. I never imagined I'd have to navigate. Legally, biological relatives had priority, and I'd have to wait. Eli's birth mother's sister visited a few times, but his condition scared her. The hospital called her often, fearing he wouldn't make it. Eventually, she gave up. At first, the court wouldn't allow me custody. His biological family still had rights. But when they stepped back, the question came, "Do you still want to adopt him?" Without hesitation, I said yes. It was the hardest month of my life, not being allowed to see him, to hold him, feeling like someone was stealing my son before he was even officially mine. A judge had to intervene to give me a chance. Even then, people kept warning me, "Do you understand what it means to care for a child who might never respond to you?" They had no idea how much he already gave back, how much Eli had already taught me. They pushed me toward therapists, psychiatrists, just to make sure I was stable. But all I felt was love. I was placed on the adoption list, but I didn't want any child. I only wanted him. They dug into every corner of my life, and in the end, they saw it clearly. It was love. Nothing but love. They warned me Eli would likely live in a vegetative state, that he'd be a constant challenge. But I saw what they couldn't. I saw him throw a tantrum over cassava soup. I saw him giggle with my daughters when they made silly faces. Yes, he had hydrocephalus. But he felt, he reacted, he lived. And long before the court recognized it, I knew. He was my son. By heart. By soul, by love. My husband Samuel never let go of the dreams he once had for a son. Instead of giving up on the idea of watching a boy play soccer, he went to a specialty store and bought Eli an adaptive chair. And there he was, every Saturday afternoon, pushing. Him along the sidelines like each game was the World Cup final. It was never about winning. It was about belonging. Eli was pure joy. I took him to the beach, and the wind brushing his face felt like a burst of life. One time, we watched people paragliding off the cliffs of Tybee Island. He couldn't speak, but his eyes shouted excitement. His laughter when his sisters goofed around echoed through the whole house. 5 years. 5 years of concentrated love, of intense, compressed life. They were the best years of mine. But then, time stopped. It was October 7th, 2024, just another Monday for the world. I was on the bus, heading home from work, exhausted, thinking about what to make for dinner. Eli was home with Kayla. He'd started a new medication that week, since the previous one no longer controlled his seizures. We were hopeful it would help. We were always hopeful. But it didn't work. I was 2 stops away when my phone vibrated. It was my daughter. Her voice was shaking. "Mom, come home quick. Eli's turning blue." My legs buckled. I told her to grab the breathing equipment, to start ventilating him. Kyla, who had studied nursing for 2 years, replied with trembling calm. "I've been doing that for over 10 minutes, Mom. I called 911. The ambulance is on the way. I arrived at the same time they did. Sirens, flashing lights, technical voices trying to hold back panic. The paramedics came in with their uniforms, opened their case, started procedures. But he was already gone. Eli had a respiratory and cardiac arrest during the seizure. And he died. When I walked in, my daughter was kneeling on the floor, holding him. I tried to go to them, but something inside me shattered. My breath grew heavy. The world, already spinning too fast, came to a halt. Since that day, something in me feels hollow. His room is untouched. The toys, the books, the little blue blanket. With animal prints still folded in the crib, I can't bring myself to move them. It feels like the last thread that connects me to him. His clothes are still folded on the armchair, as if he might come back at any moment. Sometimes, I walk in just to breathe in his scent, still clinging to the fabric. A final memory that time insists on fading. People tell me I was strong, that what I did was beautiful, that not everyone would have the courage. But it was never about courage. It was raw love, love with no guarantees, no timeline. It was saying yes to a soul asking for shelter, and in return, receiving a light that changed everything in me. Yes, Eli lived a short life. But he lived, and he was loved every single second. He had birthday parties with colorful balloons, cake with candles, and off-key singing. He had beach days, park visits, cuddles, silly jokes, and goodnight kisses. He was a son, a brother, a grandson. He was ours, and, to me, he still is, because the love we pour into someone doesn't die with their absence. It stays. It shapes us. I'm not the same Deborah who once walked up those stairs with a cold intake form in her hand. I'm Eli's mom. The woman who discovered, at 56, that her heart still had room for more, and that true love doesn't need a lifetime to be eternal. Today, I'm learning to live with longing. It shows up like an uninvited guest, knocking on my chest without warning. But I've learned to let it in. Now and then, I grab my phone and rewatch our videos. Eli in his father's arms, giggling when Kira made funny faces. On the beach, eyes closed, feeling the breeze, eating with a spoon, fussing because he wanted more cassava soup. These memories try to soften the ache. But the missing, oh, the missing has no cure. 2 months after he passed, his biological mother reached out. She said she wanted to apologize for abandoning him. I looked into her eyes and said, "I'm sorry if this sounds harsh, but Eli didn't miss you." And he didn't, because he was loved with every cell in my body. He had a mom, a dad, sisters, affection, presence, a home that cheered for him every single day. Everything they predicted for him was wrong. Eli was never a burden. He was light, and, as strange as it may sound, it's like I needed her to abandon him, so I could have the chance to live the greatest love of my life. I don't regret a thing. I'd do it all again. If I had the means, I'd open a care home just to give love and shelter to other children like him. Because what I learned from my son is that real love doesn't come from the womb. It comes from the heart. Today, I don't see a child with a disability and feel pity. Because I know behind them, there's a lion-hearted mom like me, doing everything she can to build a world that's softer, more dignified. Pity? I feel sorry for those who've never known a love like this, and if I could go back in time, I'd do it all over again, even knowing the ending, even with all the pain, because to love someone like that, even just for a while, is a privilege very few ever get. And I did. Thank you, Eli, for choosing me, for teaching me, for loving me in your quiet, wholehearted way forever. Mom, thank you for listening.